Welcome to Connect with BMC Helix webinar series. Today's webinar topic is on What's New, Helix Automation Console Roadmap session. This is with Mita Lewani and Vikas Kanandi. Please note all participants are muted due to the number of attendees, but we will, however, during parts of the session have a Q&A section. So please use the Zoom Q&A for any questions you may have. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mita.
Thank you so much, Sam. Welcome everyone again. Today we are going to talk about Automation Console, which has offering for on-premise deployment as well as Helix, which is a SaaS offering for the Automation Console. It is an interface which integrates with server automation or network automation for management, risk management of endpoints, which can be servers or network endpoints. The latest and the greatest release for the product was 22.4, and we have Vikas with us, who is the lead quality analyst in the team, and he has worked on a lot of features which were delivered recently, who is going to show us a lot of capabilities which were introduced. As we move to the next slide, you will see that the first capability which we want to talk about is on the Automation Console, is about Kubernetes. Can we see the agenda, please? Thank you. So Kubernetes is one of the latest capability which was introduced. And the reason is that it is widely used a container deployment model and provides a lot of capabilities to manage the containers when you have more than one container to be used. As users are adopting Kubernetes more and more for managing containers, it made a lot of sense to enable Automation Console to be deployed as a Kubernetes deployment as well. So we will go through that. And next capabilities which you see are the features or functionalities which are introduced on the user interface to make the management of risk from the Automation Console simpler and faster. Moving on to the first topic of the day, which is Automation Console using Kubernetes. Please go ahead to the next slide. This Kubernetes-based deployment has enabled the tool to be deployed apart from Red Hat to CentOS and Ubuntu. Since CentOS was end of life and a lot of users are moving to different platforms, in a deployment of Automation Console on Ubuntu is going to help to expand the number of platforms on which you can deploy Automation Console, and it will also help us to auto scale, to also provide the HA capability on top of Kubernetes deployment. So now Vikas is going to show us how can we use the Kubernetes-based deployment. And this demo is going to take around 25 minutes. So if you have any questions while the demo is going on, you can put in the Q&A section, and we can take it after this specific demo is completed. Let's get started.
Hey, thanks, Mita. Yeah, so this is Vikas Kanadi, and I'll just walk you through the first feature for this release, that is Kubernetes-based deployment for the TSSA. Yeah, so for TSSA, we have a new Kubernetes-based on-premise installer. For this, we just need to download this installer zip, like we can see here. We need to unzip the installer.zip, which will give us the script for the installer, and we just, yeah. So this is how it looks like, and we just need to execute it. It will show us the EULA, and we need to agree to that. And after that, it will show you the installation directory. So these are its content. So basically it has the versioning, the EULA.txt, the basic config files what we have, and the other parts. So in order to have the deployment done for the TSSA, we just need to deal as an end user. We need to first be ready with the Kubernetes cluster creation, right? And there are different deployments which are offered. By default, we have a POC deployment so that we can just have a look at how this installer works and how what all permissions it has and other things. So based on that, we can decide that which deployment we can go ahead with, small, medium, or large. So based on our requirement, we can choose it, and we can just configure that. So I'll just walk you through the config files, what we require. So in a specific way, we just need 3 config files to be configured. So first one is a deployment.config. Yeah, so I have created it for the demo purpose. I'll just show you that. Yeah. So this is how it looks like. So as name suggests, this is the deployment.config, which decides the skeleton of the deployment, that what all features or what all components we are going to have in our deployment. So as the first parameter is type of environment or the deployment environment we want. By default, it is POC, but depending on the performance and the scalability, we can change it to small, medium, or large. After that, as this is a microservice-based product, we need to have the images hosted on our registry. So BMC officially delivers the images on the containers.bmc.com, and a customer can clone them or replicate them on their local harbor registry to have the air gap environment. So for this demo, we have replicated these images on our local harbor repo. That is what I mentioned here. The project for this and the username through which I am going to access these images. The registry org where these images are hosted there. Install mode as fresh. And these are the components which I'm talking about. That is, the first one is infra. The infra component, which is required as a Postgres and the Redis. So this is a driving parameter which will decide that, do I need to have infra components to be installed or not? So which all parameters we need, we just need to make them as yes. So those will be picked up and deployed. So here, Postgres, it can be customized to external DB, external Postgres. In that case, we just have to mention it as no, and we can give that external DB's details in the other config file, which I'll just cover in a while. So for now, time being, I'm just considering that we are going ahead with the out-of-the-box Postgres PG pool. So next is BMC logging, BMC Helix logging. So this provides us the external logging capabilities, which gives us the logging uniformity in all the containers. The third one is the remediate, which enables us to deploy all the TSSA services. So if we enable all these 3, it will deploy all the available services, and we can just go ahead with the deployment. Then later, as TSSA gives the remediation for the servers and the network devices, we can decide that which type of remediation we want to go ahead with. So depending on that, we can specify either TSSA or TSNA. In case of both, we can mention as both. And RSSO enable. So here we can just say as we need our RSSO as enabled or not. So I have kept it as yes here. So this describes this config file basically drives what all the components I'm going to have in my deployment. So this is about the deployment.config. Moving on to the other config file, that is infra.config. So as name suggests, this config file holds all the infrastructure related details. So the environment as POC, I'm going ahead with. Namespace, which exists on my cluster. So this is my cluster where I have just hosted. I have just created my Kubernetes cluster. So I need to be ready with the namespaces which I have created on the Kubernetes. and same I need to be mentioning over here. The LB host, this is the URL which will be redirecting all our internet URL request, and which will be served on the base on the on behalf of the worker request. The LB port for that, the CloudOps ingress host. Currently, it is same as LB host. The domain for same. So moving on, next is the cluster type. So for Kubernetes type, we are keeping it is blank because in this release, we are by default going ahead with the Kubernetes deployment. We are keeping it blank over here. You can mention the country. The next is about the storage class. So with this deployment, we are going ahead with the NFS storage. So I have given the NFS server details, the type of storage class, and the mount path on that particular device. Yeah. Moving to next, here we are giving the Postgres storage class, which is the NFS storage. So we need all these parameters with the NFS storage if you are going ahead with that. The ingress class, like we mentioned, it is Nginx, what we are using. And we need a local path of the utility which are needed for this installer as of Helm and kubectl. We need to install these utilities on the controller machine from where this installer is going to launch. And we just need the local path for same. And this is the path, or these are the parameters where we specify the external Postgres database details. If we don't go with the external one, keep the details as is. So if you are customizing or if you are using the external DB, you can specify the host name, user, which should have the admin privilege, the database name, and the port where it is accessible. Yeah, so this is about the infra.config file. Third file which we require to configure before triggering the deployment is the endpoint details. So like we saw that TSSA supports the server and the network remediation. And depending on our deployment type, we just need to enable respective remediation support. So if you are enabling both, we need to give the server automation details and the TSNA details. And by default, the refresh cycle for both the endpoints is 60. That denotes 60 minutes. And we can change it as per our need here. And we are just giving here the service account detail, which will have the access to basic artifacts which can be pulled from the server and the network automation server to the TSAC. Yeah, so this is pretty much what we require for the the configuration what we need to do. So any queries so far? Let me know. Okay, I'll take that as a no, and we'll just start with the deployment. So this is our deployment script, deployment manager.sh. So it is first doing the pre-install checks. It has checked if it has access to the cluster, which we have configured on this particular host, the remote host. And it has done the pre-install checks where it has checked all the config files, and it has checked for the variables which we have mentioned, and it has just just validated that. And then it is doing the check for the workers or the nodes which we have configured in the cluster. And it is just checking if sufficient RAM and the CPUs are available on that particular node. Finally, what it does is it just checks if it falls under the the POC type of qualifier. So we have specified a few resources which should be available if you are specifying a POC or a small or medium or a large deployment. If those resources are not available, the deployment doesn't proceed, and we need to be ready with the resources what we have. So with this, the resources we are having are ready, and it just asks for the Harbor registry credentials. And these credentials are stored in the config files on the cluster. So when I enter the credentials, it just validated that the Docker registry verification is done, and it has created the secret for that. Post that, it has checked the other details for the Postgres, and it has just gone ahead and checked the other input files, right? Like it has checked the endpoint.config, where it has checked the other inputs which we have given for the every endpoint for the TSSA and the TSNA. So it found all are valid, and it has gone ahead and it just checks that, the RSSO is there or not. So as we have given the RSS support, it just checks that does it has the certificate file configured or not. So it has found everything as valid, and it has gone ahead and asking for the DB database password. So I'm just giving the database password, confirmed it. Yeah, and it has created the required secrets. And now it is asking for the service account user's password for the TSSA, for server automation. And this one is for the network automation. That's it. So it has taken all the details, and now it has created the PVC, and it is ready for the deployment. But now we have also enabled to create the external logging facility, right? So for that, it also need the access to the images, which it needs to configure. Yes, and now it has started with the deployment. So first it will go ahead with the Postgres SQL deployment. So now we can see in the cluster. So this is our namespace, and it has started deploying the Postgres pod. Let me know if any queries so far. We can just answer them.
They've been answered, because we're good. Carry on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it will keep deploying the infrastructure components. It will just finish with the Postgres, and then with the Redis, and then it will start with the remediate TSAC services. Yeah, and whatever the progress happens, it will keep displaying on this console. Yeah, so it will keep updating, right? And it will keep deploying. And at the end, it will just give us the URL, which is ready to log in, right? And we can just, so I have kept the URL ready for deployment, where I have already done the deployment. So this is my another Kubernetes stack where I have done already the installation, and we can just access that. So this is the URL which normally hit. So it will redirect to the TSSA endpoint. We need to enter the credentials and say login. So it has done the validation at the endpoint and redirect and given control back to the TSAC URL. And we have logged into the TSAC. So this is my 22.4 TSSA, TSAC support I have. Yeah, and normal, we can just start with the operations, what we can do here. I have just imported a scan file here, which has brought me some assets and the vulnerabilities here. Yeah, and I'm just ready to, remediate. Yep. So this is pretty much from the Kubernetes installer for TSAC we have.
Thanks, Vikas. You can still post the questions related to Kubernetes into the chat window, and we will keep on answering them.
Sure.
In the meanwhile, I think we can move to the next feature.
Yes.
All right. The next one
Yep.
is about activity logs. There are scenarios in which by mistake somebody has executed some scripts or installed a patch which was corrupted and the system goes down. It is very important for us to know the context of what business services are affected and who has made the change, what kind of operation was executed on that particular system, when was it executed, is it related to the downtime which we are observing, and what happened to that, did the operation fail, did it succeeded, and would like to know the details. So if you're executing these operations using Automation Console, we have introduced a capability to show the activity logs with various filters available, which can be used to show uh, to uh, to show you what exactly happened when which all operations were executed using the system. Also, as an admin, you will see operations which were executed, or all the operations which are executed on the system. And for other users which are non-admins, only the activities executed by their security group or role will be shown to them for the security reasons. Can we can quickly show the live demo for that, and while we are taking the Q&As too. All right, Vikas, over to you.
Yes. Right. So as Mita explained about the feature, this shows the activities happened in the system, right? So as an admin, I can see the activity logs, and this is how we can traverse to activity logs. Okay, let me just log it again. So I'm logging in as admin here. And in other browser, for simplicity, I have logged in as a patch user, which has a dedicated task for that. So this non-admin user also has access to activity logs, but he can only see the activities which he has as a patch user. Whoever has performed only can see the respective logs. But when it comes to admin, now this I'm as admin, I logged in another browser. So here I can see all the activities done by all the users on this system. So I can just check those, that if I want to see the activities done by any other user, I can just go to this advanced filter user and select that particular user and say apply. So as an admin can access all the activities done by any other user along with that particular user. So here all the activities are seen. Yeah. So let us say now, the other feature what are supported is we can just filter based on the type of activity we're doing. Let us say I just want to know what all vulnerabilities got manually mapped, right? Because that is what I want to kind of do it automatically. So I just go and see, let us say I keep only manual map, and I'll just uh, uh, check if what patch user has to do with the manual map. Yeah, so I just found that one vulnerability that is enable decom, and this vulnerability he has to do the manual mapping with, right? So here I can see if as admin I can have the catalogs in place, right? So that the auto mapping can happen. Along with that, we can go ahead with different activities here, right? The objects which I want to see, let us say I just want to see what all scan files or the vulnerabilities and assets a particular user is working on. So I'll just select that. And as a user, I have just selected other user, or for that matter, what I have as well as admin. So it just brought me all the scan files or what all assets he's working on. So it just filters out me based on the criteria what we mentioned here. Along with that, we can also specify the duration, the bracket in which, the time bracket in which I want to capture the details. Let us say from last 1 month, right? So till this date, what all has happened. So I can just take a look based on that. So all these activities I can just have a trace. Yeah, that is pretty much about the activity logs. Over to you, Mita.
Thanks, Vikas, for taking us and showing us how the activity logs are going to look like. Moving on to the next capability, which is purging older data. So in most of the enterprises, there is a retention period for which you can keep the data, and after that, you have to purge that data or get rid of that. So there are two advantages which you get that. First, it is crucial for security reasons that you don't have older data in your environment, and second, it keeps your uh, environment clean, which means that the database size does not increases over years, and the situation is under control. You're not dealing with millions of vulnerabilities in one go, because only vulnerabilities which were logged in last 6 months are relevant to you, and that's what you want to get managed as of today. So you can always keep the older data, or you can always purge the older data, and you can specify which kind of data would you like to get rid of and for how long. For some industries, it might be required to keep the data for 6 months. However, for others, it might be for 30 days or 3 months. So depending upon the duration which is really required, you can mention that, and you can also specify that I would like to purge the vulnerabilities data. However, the patching data is not that huge, and I want to keep that data. So that granularity on the basis of use cases we have given. And the top three use cases which you will see is operations, patching, compliance, and vulnerabilities for which the purging is enabled. However, if you see that there are more records which are getting added to the system and but does not make sense over time, and we want to get rid of that, you can always tell us, and we can see that can also be included. We can quickly look into the demo of this capability, and these are APIs so that it can be fully automated using any script which you might be using already. Please go ahead, Vikas.
Right. So I'll just get rid of this first. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just clear this out. Yeah. So as Mitas mentioned, we have given the purge support. We can get rid of the older older records in the system, which are frequently used, like operations, policies, the scan imports, right? Let us say, last 3 months or 6 months, I just want, I'm not requiring those data, right? So I can just configure that, right? Or I can just write a cron job for that matter, and just trigger these APIs. So what these APIs will do is it will just, so these are the APIs, right? And these APIs will keep, purging the applicable artifacts, which are older than whatever the configured value we have. So by default, TSAC has the 180 days as configured as a tenure, but it's just a config file. We can configure that as per our requirement, restart the container, and it will be in effect. So for the demo, I can just take example of a scan file, right? And there are two APIs actually, which gives us the control that even accidentally we don't end up deleting the scan files. So import scan preview, it just retrieves all the eligible vulnerabilities policies, right, which are older than the specified time. And it will show you first the response, that which all the scan files are eligible for purging, and you can analyze and you can check the impact of that. And once you're sure, you can hit the final delete API. So this will actually delete the artifacts, the scan files from the system, and it will just clean those API scan files from the system. So let me just take the token, yes, and pass it on to the API. Yeah, so I'll just see if I have the eligible Collie scan file or anything for me. Okay, so let me show you first the scan files I have imported in my system. Right, so I have 5 scan files, right, out of which 4 are imported as an admin and 1 as an end user, right? And 1 scan file is shared with another user, right? So among these, as per the API preview shows, AG3 Win5. Yeah, so this is the scan file which was kind of imported pretty early, that is before 6 months. So if I'm fine with that, I'll just go ahead and just hit this delete API. It should just get rid of that scan file. Okay, so it has returned me the 202. That shows it must have been deleted. So I'll just refresh. Yeah, so it has deleted that scan file, which was returned by this API, that is AG3Win5. Yeah, so I am no more seeing that scan file here. Yep. So these are the APIs, right, which helps us to just clean our system based on our requirement. And similar thing is there for the operations, right? Any operations we just want to get rid, we can do that. And along with that, in a patch policy, let us say any policy we have just kept the same, but it has multiple runs, right? And we just want to keep the latest runs, so we can use it for same as well. Yeah. So with our requirement, we can just use these APIs and just schedule them as per our requirement, and it will keep your system up to date. Yep. So that is from the Purge APIs. Over to you, Mita.
Thanks, Vikas. Moving on to the next feature, which is using patch policies or execution of patch jobs using operation template. So there is a thin line between giving the flexibility to the end users and keeping it robust and consistent when you're executing the operations. So when you are creating patching operations using native operations, what's happening is you have to go through the widget where you provide the parameters on each panel, and once all the parameters are filled in appropriately, the job will be executed at the scheduled time. However, if you are executing the repetitive patch policy operations, which means that every month I come, I see how many new patches has been released by Windows or Microsoft, and then I just execute them, deploy on them on particular servers. I do not like to go through the widget multiple times every month, come and select all those parameters and just hit submit. And then I have to make sure it is the data I submitted is consistent with the data which I submitted last month, and if there are any errors, I have to submit it again. So to get rid of that problem, we have introduced the capability to use patch policies inside operation template. So when you create an operation template, we will see in the demo, you can specify the patch policy and the parameters for installing the missing patches onto the system. And if you would like to override certain parameters during the execution of that patch installation operation, you can enable the allow override option. Otherwise, you create a template using a patch policy and just specify the schedule while using that patch policy for execution of the operation, so that the chances of errors are minimalized, and there are consistent way of deploying the patches every month or month over month, or if you're doing it every week, the same patch policy template can be used to deploy the patches every time you want to execute it. We will quickly see the demo of how this is going to look like before moving to the next feature.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, operation template. So we can just traverse to that from operations, and the second tab as operation templates. So operation template is kind of a format or a template where you can specify the uh, you know uh, the basic configuration you can do, and based on that you can create an operation, or you can reuse the same format for other purposes. So I'll just walk you through the already created template. So I'll just edit into that. Yeah. So earlier, this release, we have given support for the patch support in the operation template. Earlier, there was a support for the NSH, badge, and deploy. So here I have created a template where I have selected a job type as a patch policy, right? And here I have selected a already existing policy. Now in my system, I have two patch policy created and executed. So one which just scans and analyze analyze the assets which are Win2K 12, and other scans the Win2K 16 assets, right? So I just select the Win2K 12, and I just save a location where I just want to save these. I select the assets on which I want to just run the remediation, and I just select the reboot options here. Now this currently I have configured the change management, that is approval management. So I have configured the TSO connector. So in this way, we can configure the change creation if we want to have, if we have certain critical jobs, critical operations to be done, and which has to go through some approval. So we can just configure the change management over here, right? And just share that template to that particular operator. So whoever executes with that operation template, that operation has to go through the change process, right? And we can always select and unselect this allow override option, which mandates or gives an option for the user to override that setting or not. So if you want to mandate the change management, we can just simply uncheck this. So this will make that particular operation always go through the change management. And the schedule. So let us say I have some requirement where I want to have the staging, let us say 1 hour prior to my actual remediation, right? So I can mandate that as well, right? Or I can give an option to override that and customize that, right? Sometimes my maintenance window is fixed, and that is pretty well known, right? As an as admin, I can just configure that, and I can I can make these options as I will not allow it to override. So that will mandate them to allow execute only in that maintenance window, and get the notification to particular email ID. So we can just configure that. So this way we can customize this operation template, and we can configure these based on our requirement, and which this leverages a lot of benefits to us. So I'll just click on update. So this has updated, and I can again edit and do some changes. I can create a copy of this if I have to make any changes, any slide changes into that, and I can directly create an operation with that. So at the end, it just gives us a summary that what all options your new operation is going to have with. So the options wherever we have selected as override allowed, right? Only those parameters will be able to update. So if you want to change the assets, we can do that, right? Do the reboot option change, we can do that, right? And other things which we have allowed. Now you can see here the change management, we have mandated it, so it has not shown here. So these are the summary with which this operation will get created with. Yeah, so I'll just click on cancel, and I have a sample operation created with that. So here, whenever I edit any operation, so here it just shows us that editing the operation template doesn't affect the scheduled operations, which uses this template. So whatever changes we are doing, that won't impact the priorly created operations. It will the changes what we are doing are applicable only for the new operations what we create. Yeah, and there are existing features that you can just search by these. You can have just favorite and other options as is. Yeah, any queries on this? Or
There's
we're good on
no
this?
questions at the moment in the Q&A, but feel free if anyone's interested to put some questions in and we'll have a look during the session. So there's nothing at the moment, Vikas.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so this is pretty much about the operation template, the patch support what we have. Yeah.
Thanks, Vikas. And with this feature, we are hoping that that the amount of time which you will spend in execution of operations will significantly reduce. So your patching deployment will be relatively much faster than it used to be because the operation creation has really simplified. Do let us know if that happens or if you would like to improve it further. We will be happy to look into that in details. Moving on to the next capability, which is ability to add nodes to the vulnerabilities. So a lot of users want to use a single pane of glass for managing the vulnerabilities. They don't want to switch between multiple tools such as scanner as well as remediation tool like automation console and then for another tool for reporting and so on. So one of the feature or the capability which can be used to stop switching between multiple tools is a field which can be used for providing a custom value, which is a description. It can be a note, and a note can be of larger length compared to tags. We already have tags available, which are used to specify the business services, environment, or anything else you would like to do, but it's a tag which will be a key value pair. However, in the notes, you can actually add description of some vulnerabilities, and also you can export that data into the CSV format in that if needed. If you use that field, you can provide any custom value which otherwise would have been part of your scanner, and now you don't have to go back to the scanner whenever you want to read these values. Let us quickly look into the demo. How can we add value and see the notes field once the notes are added to the vulnerabilities?
Yeah. So on the scanned vulnerabilities, so these are the vulnerabilities which are there currently in the system. And if you want to just mention some quick notes, so I'll just show that again. In the vulnerabilities under actions, we have a new option called update notes. So if I just want to tag it as low priority, I can just update that. Yeah, and when you just click on that vulnerability, we just see that what we tagged with that bit. So this is just a quick feature, just to mention if we have any quick outlook on on any vulnerability we have. It will just give us the that hook on what vulnerabilities are. I just added what comment. So yeah.
And that takes us to the last feature for the day, which is network vulnerability management for Helix Automation Console. Like I mentioned in the beginning, Automation Console has two types of offering. One is on-prem and other one is Helix. For Helix Automation Console, also you need to manage vulnerabilities for network devices as you do for servers. So we enabled the network vulnerability connector for network connector for Helix Automation Console as well, the SaaS offering, so that it can connect to the network automation tool, which is TSSA on-premise, and can manage the vulnerabilities. This will help you to drive the consistency across servers and network device management because the same tool will be used. And if you would like to go for operations where BMC is managing the solution, the risk solution for you, which in case of network is vulnerability management. You can use a single tool, just enable it in your environment and start using it. So all the capabilities for vulnerability management, which is available for servers, are available for network devices as well. For example, you can import the vulnerabilities, map it to the remediation content, create. Once some remediation content is mapped, you can create an operation to remediate those vulnerabilities. You can also create exception for the vulnerabilities for which there is no remediation content available, or those network devices are not accessible or not really important to you, or it might be a possibility that a scanner is reporting false positive. Also, the change in approval is very important feature when you are deploying any changes to the production server or production network device. In that case, only if the change is approved, then only uh, your operation will be executed on the network device. The same is applicable to server as well as networks. The next one is tagging, which means that let's say you would like to tag some of the network devices as firewalls, routers, switches, cloud, on-prem, or based on the location, such as Sydney or San Francisco. You should be able to do that. Any custom property which you're importing from any tool, we should be able to import using tagging. And then the remediation, which means that ultimately your job is to make sure that the vulnerabilities, the real vulnerabilities which are identified in your environment, are remediated both for servers and networks. So the tool will help you to execute that operation. We'll quickly look into the demo of this before we wind up the session.
Yeah. Yeah. So far we had the server automation and the network remediation support for the on-premise deployment. But for the AD deployment, we have enabled the TSNA support as well. So I think the session will just end. So I'll just log out and log in again. Right. So when we browse through the connectors page and click on the add a connector, so earlier under the on-premise connector, we were just having the support for the server automation, orchestration, the discovery connector. Now we have enabled the support for the network automation connector. So with this, we can configure this connector, and post configuration, we can just download it and run it on the remote VM, and it will start catering to the network automation capabilities. So on this setup, I have already configured that particular connector, and this is how it looks like. So it just needs network automation server details, the port, the automation realm name, the service account user details, and the collection mode schedule. Yeah. So I have configured this and downloaded it on some VM, and it is already running there. So now let us see how to log in once we have the TSNA connector up and running. So with this, the same URL, we just need to check the one more dropdown, which will be enabled from this release, that is network automation user. And here we need to log in with the credentials. Yes, so this brings us to the network automation endpoint. Okay, it is. Okay, I'll just log in again. So here we can see that the version is current release, and the profile, right? The user which is logged in as a network automation user, and you can see the activity logs which are done on this are related to the TSNA. So the dashboard, what we see for the TSNA is supported only the vulnerability dashboard, as we support only the vulnerability remediation on the TSNA. So we can do the import of scan files. Can just select the severity filters. Okay, that scan file looks like that was having some issue. Yeah, and apart from that, we can import different realms here. So we can see that it's already been imported here. Yeah, so once we have the scan file import, we can see the other features. So I'll just try to import it again. Okay, maybe you're a single device. Okay, it looks like some issue on this particular setup. Yeah, so as Mita suggested, once the scan file is imported, we'll see the assets, and based on that, we can do the different options, different operations like the tagging, the vulnerability management operations, vulnerability remediation on that. And that gives us the end-to-end vulnerability remediation for all the network devices, what we can see here, or what we just import from the scan file. Yeah, and the change management, we have the change management support for the vulnerability remediation on the the network endpoint as well. For that, we just go ahead with the orchestration connector. So this enables us the change management support for the vulnerability remediation on the TSNA endpoint. Yeah, so that is pretty much from the TSNA connector support.
Thanks, Vikas. That brings us to the end of the session today. We are looking forward to adopting the latest version of the Automation Console in your environment. Either ways, on SaaS or the on-prem solution, whichever works for you. Do let us know the feedback or any questions which comes after the webinar is completed. We are happy to answer that over email or in the chat window, or Q&A is fine. With that, I would like to thank Vikas and hand it over to Sam.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. We hope you found this useful, and I will be sending out an email shortly with the survey link and also the presentation slides from today and a recording which we will just edit from today's meeting. And if you do have any other questions, please put them into the survey and I can forward them on to Mita and Vikas. So thanks again for everyone joining, and we hope to see you very soon.